The Eurosceptic MP, who as chairman of the European Research Group of pro-Brexit Tories, will lead a delegation to Downing Street in a bid to ensure that the government does not make too many concessions when it comes to negotiating the UK's final deal with the EU. Last week Mr Rees-Mogg likened the Brexit transition deal, which governs the first 21 months after Brexit Day next March, to a dog rolling over without having its tummy tickled. And Environment Secretary Michael Gove, who had previously vowed that Britain would leave the common fisheries policy immediately, described the interim arrangements as suboptimal. Writing exclusively in today's Sunday Express, Mr Rees-Mogg warns Mrs May that if we remain tied to the EU permanently, then it will be a humiliation on the scale of Suez. NC Jacob Rees-Mogg will hold crunch talks with Theresa May this week. Matt Crossix/Impix Entertainment. Rees-Mogg warns for those who support Brexit to stay awake. A final deal on this basis would make fools of us all and would inevitably only be done by sleight of hand. Jacob Rees-Mogg pointing out that the transition deal has not allowed a single extra power to be returned to Britain at 11 p.m. on March 29 next year. He said, "If this was then to become the permanent state, it would be one of the greatest failures in our island story." Calling for those who supported Brexit to stay awake, he said the transition deal should only be cautiously accepted if it is genuinely a staging post rather than the final destination. "There is so much in the transition that the government said or implied it would never agree. Free movement, the European Court of Justice, new laws, large amounts of money, sincere cooperation and even our fishing waters are all in the transition deal," he said. As fishing was authoritatively stated to be excluded by a cabinet minister just a few days before the deal was published, this is a cause for concern. "A final deal on this basis would make fools of us all and would inevitably only be done by sleight of hand." On Thursday, Mrs May will mark the year-long countdown to Brexit by embarking on a day-long tour of the UK to outline her determination to deliver a deal that works for every community. Cabinet ministers will then undertake their own journeys across Britain to explain how our future relationship with the EU will work, a Downing Street source said. Having reached an agreement on the implementation period, businesses have the certainty they need to plan. Crucially, during that period we will be able to strike and sign new trade deals across the world. But, just as it is important that we are an outward-facing nation, it is equally important that we spend the months leading up to Brexit strengthening our own union of nations. Pamps Craig McKinley and Anne-Marie Trevelyan stand with Jacob Rees-Mogg ahead of fishing for leave. "In 12 months we will be leaving the EU, and as that becomes real for people, it is right that they will be asking what Brexit means for them. That is why cabinet ministers will go out across the country, meeting people from all walks of life, listening to their views and explaining how we can secure a new deep and special partnership with the EU that will bring together communities, grow our economies and keep our people safe. This is the time to bring our country back together, to celebrate our union and to be confident that we are building a better future for Britain." Leading Brexiteer Boris Johnson is not being included in the Road to Brexit Life After We Leave tour in a move likely to be perceived as a snub. PA Theresa May needs to stand up to Brussels, says Jacob Rees-Mogg. Instead, Chancellor Philip Hammond will discuss the economy, Michael Gove will meet fishermen and farmers, Transport Secretary Chris Grayling will talk to people working in aviation, rail and haulage, while Business Secretary Greg Clark will travel to Britain's industrial heartlands in the Midlands and the North and meet shipbuilders on the Clyde. Culture Secretary Matt Hancock will meet broadcasters and digital firms, while Justice Secretary David Gauke will talk to Britain's biggest law firms in London, Bristol, Manchester, and Leeds. A Number 10 insider denied Mr. Johnson was being sidelined, saying, "This is about a conversation within the country about how Brexit will deliver for everyone. It's about domestic preparedness." He's the Foreign Secretary.